I give a fuck? Why do I give a fuck? Why do I try so hard? Why do I care so much?
Welcome to Why Do I Give a Fuck? A cross-cultural conversation between myself, Deanne Tate,
and Johanna Thompson. In these times of great struggle and possible shift, we ask ourselves,
why do we give a fuck about any of it? How does the lens we see the world through impact what we see?
And what do we do about it?
Our last episode, we were talking about Alligator Alcatraz and the concentration camp that has been opened in South Florida, Everglades. And this bill got signed into law that is going to dramatically take support and funding and healthcare and SNAP benefits and Medicaid access and all kinds of things away from the poor and low-income humans in the U.S. Just got signed into law on the 4th of July. And one of the statistics, I guess, of some of the monies that this new bill is wanting to distribute is to ICE, because we've been talking a lot about ICE and how they're disappearing people, and with this new concentration in Florida that can hold up to 5,000 humans and will probably be holding a lot more. I just jotted down some of the money that this new bill is going to distribute to ICE. So it is broken down by 45 billion for detention centers. So more of these concentration camps will be popping up around the country. 45 billion to those, 29.9 billion to hire and support ICE agents. So adding that up, it's over 100 billion by 2029. 4 years from now.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Over 100 billion just to ICE. And that has come out of the funding for access to Medicaid, for access to SNAP benefits, all of our social safety nets, everything that people need to support themselves and to support their children. And it includes taking money away from public schools and taking money away from, just all of
our public resources and privatizing things, so that then again we go back into the system of slavery. Like, I want to help people start to relook at like what slavery looked like in the founding and the erection of the United States. And I also want to talk about, when we're talking about welfare, so food stamps, SNAPs, Medicaid, and all of that kind of stuff, the demographic of humans in the United States who get that, the largest number are children, our elderly, and our people who are have disabilities. So like the narrative is that, non-white people are on food stamps and in concentrated areas in urban facilities, in places where there's less, economic resource. There are a large majority of demographic, but if we're looking at the entire United States and who is receiving welfare benefits, is actually the people in the United States who have it a little bit more difficult to be able to do their self-care. So like our most vulnerable populations and people. So like where your compassion is when you hear these narratives where you're just thinking about the stories that they tell and what you see on the movies of who is living in ghetto buildings, in projects, or in urban communities. It's actually our children, our elderly, and our disabled. I'm just going to keep repeating it so that it comes into folks' mind about who that is. And your ethnicity, as far as being a child, an elderly person, or somebody who's disabled, goes across the entire spectrum of however you ethnically identify.
Right. Yeah. It's not, it's not as much of the racial. What I've been learning is that it's not as much about the racial component as it can be more about the class. And it's an intersection of all of those things. I think that if you're looking at the United States as a whole, like you said, that the majority of people that are on these kinds of social safety net structures or using them, having access to them, are predominantly white, but that's also, it's going to fluctuate depending on where you are. But the thing that I never hear people talking about, except in the circles of people that are actually educated about this, is the amount of subsidies that our government gives to corporations, the amount of subsidies and I remember there was a push not I don't even know what the time frame is ago, where they were talking about drug testing
Mm-hmm.
people before they were allowed to receive things like SNAP
Mm-hmm.
benefits,
Benefits, yeah.
aka food stamps. And but they're not talking about drug testing the CEOs of the corporations that are taking so many
Mm-hmm.
subsidies. I mean,
Talk about
that's
it.
why we push against, well, that's why we push
Mm-hmm.
against McDonald's and Walmart and things like this,
Mm-hmm.
because these corporations don't pay their workers a living wage,
Mm-hmm.
so that the majority of their work population has to be on some level of federal subsidies
No
just to
subsidy.
put food on their table and keep a roof over their heads, because they're not getting
Exactly.
paid a living wage. So that is a subsidy for these corporations. And I know you know this, but I'm just saying it out loud.
Well,
That was,
it's debt systems. It's debt systems. Like
yeah, yeah,
it's a purposeful structure to help to re-administer slavery in the United States.
right,
That
right,
that was when the United States was flourishing the most under that economic structure. So
right.
like we have to like really be very clear about that. Folks love slavery, and I'm talking about what is actually being recreated, which is
Yes,
horrible. So when y'all talk about, I would never do slavery, what are you doing to protect yourself in this moment? Because if you are in a system of debt, like, like worker debt, because you're not getting enough money or you're not even getting enough hours to be considered a full-time employee, to have to be given the benefits that you are supposed to receive as a
right.
worker in the United States to help you survive and sustain your life and your
That's
livelihood. And
why,
then the rates of housing for like basic needs and necessities is way beyond what you can,
mhm.
afford.
And
It's
that's
really,
why
but
the
it's more
push,
and more people who are experiencing that. It's not just like these are talking like people that try to go work 9 to 5 and
right.
have jobs that were traditionally jobs that would help you to sustain your life, but it's just not possible now.
And why people have to have multiple jobs, because like you said, that we saw a big
Hmm.
push for this, in the past 10 years, especially, where companies were paying, were keeping people's hours just below the requirement for giving
Yep,
them access to
absolutely.
why we see the destruction of unions across the board, because that gives people collective bargaining power. And so they don't want unions because that gives people more power. And so yeah, like you've said, it's been a project that's been long in the making. And
Mhm.
anytime you hear anyone that wears a red hat or doesn't wear a red hat that says "Make America Great Again," that's their great. That's their definition
Hmm.
of great, is to go back to.
It's not only the
uh,
red hats. I'm just gonna say it now.
no, it's not just
I'm
red hats. Right, right,
gonna
right.
say there's a whole lot of hats, green hats, blue hats, and a whole lot of hats that are really happy with being able to be in a position of power and to get the resources to continue to maintain that position.
Yeah, yeah. So that was it. That's something that I am giving a fuck about these days,
Absolutely.
and thinking about, what what does the future hold? And tell me something that you're giving a
Well,
fuck.
I would just say, I mean, I can talk about what our media, as all of this is going on, as, well, you were going to talk a little bit more about the big, beautiful bill
Mm,
and the benefits to billionaires. And as all of these legislative practices are going forth, my algorithm has a whole lot talking about Sean P. Diddy Combs getting out of,
most of it.
is it all,
Yeah,
well, yeah, fine being what he was arrested and has
yeah,
been jailed for a period of time.
yeah.
And so it's really interesting to see like where the focus is, where on the impact and effect of your life from like these legislative moves with these big beautiful bills and erecting more over surveillance in our communities. And folks are talking about
Diddy.
Sean Puffy Combe. But I do think I am appreciative of the narrative that is highlighting the fact that there is a difference within our legal system with whether or not you have money and resources to get past whatever you've been arrested for.
That's right.
And hmm And and then how people go through our system of justice in the United States, where you would take a plea bargain even if you haven't done the thing that you've been accused of doing
Hmm.
because of racism, that you will believe that you will be then sentenced to life in prison. And then life in prison, especially because they're doing convict leasing and all of that, is yet just another
Form of
mechanism
slavery.
for a
Right.
system of slavery.
Yeah, yeah.
So, like in it's there's every every place you look, you're going into college, you're going to be paying $80,000 a year and upwards,
Hmm.
which then if you don't have that resource to be able to pay, you are in debt and a slave in some way, shape or form to like get that paid back if you have to take out loans, if you get
Hmm.
arrested and you're, incarcerated in some type of way and you're in the jail system, if you're just a worker who's not able to meet their needs
Right.
9 to 5. So it's like really changing into a state of, I mean, the 4th of July is, you know,
Yeah.
it's a revolution. So it's happening, it's real, it's present.
What are
And
your,
there's
I'd be curious if you want to share your, if you have a take on Sean Combs and the circumstances that have led him to where he is, and just the results of the case being brought forward, and what do
well,
you
the results of the case, I mean, what I experienced in the history of the United States is that when men transgress women, and not just the United States, but across the globe, when men transgress women, they are not really held accountable for it. So
yeah.
that is it. I also heard some information. I didn't do any deep dive, but in Florida or California, in California, you have a year to press charges on domestic violence. And so, like, there's some, like, kind of like legal loopholes that were occurring in the way that he was convicted. And what I focus more on is kind of what I was bringing up before is that what happens for a person who has a lot of resources
Hmm.
to be able to kind of slide through our justice system, which is supposed to be a justice system that is equal for all person, excuse me, regardless of whether or not you have any type of economic resource. So I think about that. I think about the injustices, and I also, there's a realistic part of me that's like, if we're looking at it in regards to resources, he's a black man who is able to use his resources and get out of the system in the same way that I've seen benefit white identified humans.
Oh
And
yeah.
so it's like, all right, well, at least we're seeing some closer equality in that because of capital and resource. And I just think about the reality of that. Like I think about,
Yeah.
Donald Trump being able to get off on all of the atrocities that he's been doing and all of the numerous other people who have gotten off on all of the atrocities. But, you know, and then, just as a reminder that gender is real. So like when they are not allowing folks to express their genders and taking it back to a binary, how set up the system is for male identified people
Hmm.
to be safe and okay and protected. And that's something that bothers me deeply in my soul.
Yeah. That's where I get caught up in it too, just based on the crimes that he had the charges were brought up on, and I saw the video of what he did to Cassie out in front of the elevator. And as a domestic violence survivor myself, I have a really hard time being okay with anybody that has perpetrated those kinds of crimes getting off. But I also understand the sense of some level of justice and maybe
I know it's hard to use that word, but I get what you mean.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
not justice in a black man being able to walk away
Hmm.
from charges, which
Hmm.
you hardly ever see. And
Hmm.
so yeah, I get conflicted about that.
And when we're looking at our judicial system, especially for people who are outside of the United States system, where he's out of being locked up, but he has to be sentenced. And all of these people that do some major big thing that we hear about, and then we hear that they get out, there is a sentencing that happens and some time that has to be done. But
Right.
what we do see with people like with resources of capital is that their sentencing will be like time served, and
Mhm.
now you have to like do, some probation, some type of light probation
Yeah.
or community service or something like that. So there is going to be a sentencing, and then for the things that he was found guilty of, they're going to do some equating of accountability on those verdicts.
Right. Yeah. So
So,
yeah, he's not.
and then he's been hurt, like, you know what I'm saying? Like his reputation, his career, like all of the things that you can do to bring down somebody who sits in a position of power in African American and Black communities across the globe. There has been a, like they've done multiple times before. Bill Cosby, Michael Prince, like there is a beating up on your reputation in a real way, having people question you, side eye you, making it more difficult for you to do the progressive work that you are going to be doing, even because you're human and are. I'm not making excuses, but I am recognizing that there is a specific targeting and there's a specific harm that comes to somebody who has a large reach that is targeted and being brought down differently than other folks that might be in the same behavior.
Yeah. Well, and do you feel like you may have already said this, so apologize if I am asking for a qualification, but do you feel like because of the imbalance, and I don't call it the justice system, and it's a criminal punishment system, but because of the imbalance over the course of all of its inception, that some of the algorithms that I've been hearing, some of the voices that I've been hearing have been, and I feel like it was similar in the OJ case of it's our turn to get off, and so
Yeah. And the getting off is relative.
right, right,
Do you know what I mean? Like, to my point, that harm has been done,
mhm,
a family has been ruined, you know, a, the acc- as a restorative practitioner, and that's the way that I would think what I think about and approach this, like what income, because we all create harm and different levels of harm, but
mhm,
what in this moment, what in community can you do to make amends with your position of power? Like
mhm,
there's been a lot of jokes of like you go back right into just the way that you've been behaving, or is it like, okay, I've gone through this experience. I've been held to accountability through the United States justice system, but these are the things that I can do to try to make amends to my community, to the communities that I've harmed, because I have a position of power and because I have resources. And so like that's the thing that I focus on. Okay, you've gone through this process, but like what are you as an individual gonna think about, like who have I harmed, what happened, and how in this moment do I go forward and use my resources to do good or to help? Because that's what we need to be focusing on, not how punished a person is being, but
yeah,
like how can we hold them accountable to be better to community because you have the resources to be.
right. Do you think he? I mean, I don't, I don't know. I don't, and you and I are just speculating because I don't think either one of us know him personally, but I wonder if you think he would be inclined to do that, to say
Yeah,
things. You
I
do?
do. I mean, like even throughout the course of this experience, when the video with Cassidy was released, there wasn't denial. He immediately got on his social media channels and was like, "That was horrible. I don't know what I was doing. People are crazy. I need help." And like he showed remorse in that moment. I don't think that there was ever a time that I saw where he was like, "Yeah, I beat her ass," and like, so what? It was very remorseful and oh my God, I hate seeing myself like that. And whether or not he was under any form of, influence, I'm not talking about chemical influence of the things that are existing when you have a lot of resources, um like that makes people in positions of power behave and act a certain way. Again, not excuses, but like in this moment when you see that of yourself, how are you going to exist now? You have beautiful daughters who, folks have been speculating are treating him differently because they feel the way because, they're in their female bodies, or, like what can you do to think about the impact that you have,
Hmm.
and how can you be somebody who grows and feeds into community? And I
Yeah,
think that if we start focusing and thinking about things in that way, as to are you happy whether or not this man got off, whatever, he's off. And
yeah,
so let's ask him to be better, to be better.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's interesting I mean, it's another example to me of the difference in algorithms and what you hear and what you don't hear. Because I never heard that take that he had, that he expressed that level of remorse after that video was
Mm-hmm.
released, which
Oh yeah.
not surprised I didn't hear that. But that brings up a lot of curiosity for me, and just reminds me that I probably don't know half of what, I saw one video and that's it. But
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you bringing that restorative thought process into this particular conversation, because ultimately, wouldn't that be a better world that we lived in if anyone that caused harm in any way to other humans was, what could that look like? What could that process of accountability look like to restore and repair the people that were harmed, if that's possible, if they're still with us, or their families, or the community as a whole.
Right. Rather than punish, because like a punishment occurs. I mean, does that feel good for a moment? Yeah, maybe, but the transgression continues.
Right.
And restoring works, like calling people in rather than isolating people and allowing them to be in whatever they're in that's outside of what's best for the community and existing is not what I would choose as a solution, because it just the other way works also. Like, people who are doing like heinous things in the community that they've done it to, recognizes that we all do things that are horrible, but like, how do we create real safety for ourselves by getting you right? Let's
Yeah.
get you right so that we can actually have some real safety. We don't want you just out there, being beat, because that just makes you more crazy. And we have a lot of ticking time bomb. Big Daddy, the United States is a ticking time bomb for like the privilege that he's existed in. I will always repeat and always say that privilege is harmful too to someone's psyche, like
Yeah.
in of existence, and recognizing your impact on people, and like it's
It's
not
very
healthy. It's not
difficult.
healthy. Hitler, it's not healthy. Like all
Yeah.
of like the most evil, horrible humans out. It's not healthy for your existence, and you live in a psychosis that's just um sad.
Yeah. Yeah. And causes harm that is, I mean, I really resonate with what you just said, and I think about, some of the most unhappy people have got the most privilege and access to resources, and because we all hear the thing, money doesn't buy happiness, and it's not necessarily about money. Money can make things, more accessible and have more access to things, but ultimately, privilege is a sickness. It makes
It's
it
a
so difficult
sickness.
for me to fully identify how I impact others in a harmful way. I have to work at it all the time, every day, and even then I screw up.
Hmm.
And but it's after 57 years of living in that privilege, it's yeah, it's like a and some people go into it more deeper. Some people end up being like the Cheeto, who then lash out and into
Have
extreme.
no consideration of
Right.
other humanity.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like I'm thinking about how he's having all these parties all the time, like the big old, frat boy who wants attention and wants to be cool, but you're doing all of this stuff and you're still not getting the responsiveness. If you tried a little bit of care, consideration, reflection, and humanity, the
Hmm.
love would be a lot greater, because all you're doing is looking for love, but nobody can love you because you turn into a monster. You are a monster.
Right.
And so like you're missing what it is that you're actually looking for. If you're looking at the psychosis of it,
Yeah.
it's madness. It's really madness, and it's sad. It's sad to watch. It's sad to experience. It's sad to be being a person that's impacted for it. But we have to. Oh, it was wonderful. I learned this new thought process on decolonization, the difference between decolonization and decoloniality. And
Ooh,
so, yeah, I know,
wow.
right?
I've never heard that term before. Got a new
Some,
term.
this is not me. Some African sister was breaking it down from
Okay.
Africa, doing her African studies, but I was like, yes, yes, tell me about it. So, like decolonization, right, is like undoing the colonization, like undoing. But decoloniality is when you go into your cultural rooted understanding and then be able to shift that. So an example of that is just in this conversation we were talking about Puffy, P. Diddy Combs and his thing. It's just like decoloniality is saying, okay, this person has gone through this punishment system. How do we call him in and think about him as how do we get him to be a better person with the resources that he has? Whereas, a normal US citizen and the actual conversation that's happening on the narrative on our social media and all of our news stations is should he be punished? Should he be, persecuted? And it's like, why? What is that going to help? What
Yeah.
is that actually going to do to evolve humanity? It's not going to do anything. So, like, let's shift our understanding and thought process and be like, all right, he went through that. Hey, now let's get him to be better, do better. And we all need to support him in what that looks like, holding him accountable. If you go to one of his freak offs, check to make sure there's no babies that are being harmed.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Let's be better. Let's do
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
Because we can, and that's not hard. And actually, it, it feels better. It's more healthy for your existence.
I think a lot of people would have a hard time. I mean, I'm struggling just in myself thinking about like if we were to extend that to the Cheeto. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he was not held accountable really for, I mean, he was convicted duly, of
Mm-hmm.
30, more than 30 counts of felony counts and still got elected president and has not been held accountable for anything. And here I am, I'm trying to be an abolitionist. I don't believe in the criminal punishment system. I don't want that to exist. And yet I'm
Yeah.
like struggling with the idea that we could in the world that you're speaking into, uh,
Mm-hmm.
call somebody that horrible in to say, how could you be a better person? I'm
And how
struggling.
can we all hold you account? How can you all hold you together to be accountable? And I'm glad that you brought that up because it's not to say that when you're thinking about being in a restorative that you're not going to have human emotions of revenge
Yeah.
and all of the things that we are cultured in, right? But within the process, even when it is the person who has done like the most heinous thing, because has murdered or killed your child in a horrible way, right? The part of the process is the person who has committed the harm to be able to sit in their own accountability of acknowledging what happened.
Hmm.
And that reflective process is when somebody who's doing something horrible, that's what we're seeking and looking for, right?
Hmm.
That you can recognize the horror of your ways and then you can participate in the process of saying how you are going to do better to make amends. That's the restoration,
Yeah.
right? So it's for him to be able to like imagine this man, Big Daddy, to sit there and say, yo, you know what? I'm being like really inhumane.
Hmm.
These decisions I've made are crazy and harmful to these people, and it's harmful to these people in this way. And oh my God, I recognize the impact of what I've done over here to this people, and I recognize the history of the United States in violating this person. That is this is like this. What have I been doing? Oh my gosh, I've been like under a spell. I cannot believe I've been under the spell. And now I know and I recognize and I see the impact. And oh my God, please let me listen to what that impact is to you. And oh, I really feel bad about it. And like, what is it that you need for me to do? And let me in my position of power do that.
Yeah.
Like, yes, thank you. Like, that's what I would want from this man. If we could go through this process, that's what I would want from him because that has a better outcome
And
for
I think
everyone.
and I think I know the answer to this, but I want to ask for anybody out there listening that might be thinking the same thing I'm thinking is do we create the environment with which, like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Like, do we
Mm,
create the restorative justice model or transformative justice model in our systems and then hope that people, I mean, I'm answering my own
mm,
questions, I'm saying it out loud. It's like, but it feels to me like there is no pit deep enough for a man like that, and yet I hear what you're saying, and it's like, I almost want him, I want somebody that's as heinous as he is to show that they're capable of doing that before I even give him the option, which is,
voila.
you know what I mean? Which is
Well,
not,
it
I know
depends.
it's not, that's,
I
as I'm
would,
saying it out loud, that sounds violent, but it's like, I don't know.
I'm saying, like, who would you equate as to somebody who has done something like so heinous? Because there are folks that right now are incarcerated who have
Yeah,
done some things that most people in the world would experience as ridiculously violent and unforgivable.
yeah,
And the people who have had the direct impact of that have been able to sit with those people and forgive them. And that's not for us to make a decision about,
yeah.
right? And so, like, the better conversation is to those folks who have experienced that and to hear what happened in your heart and your mind and the way that you experienced life
Yeah.
that helped you to get to a place where you can sit in a room with this person and have them acknowledge the harm and y'all come to some understanding about what makes sense for you to feel healed and restored.
Hmm.
Again, it's a mindset that's hard. This is not easy. This is not easy work. And you can't force anybody into that situation. Everybody has to be ready to be vulnerable and I think, having a significant amount of strength to really face yourself in the mirror because it's very hard for all of us to do when we've created harm. And that to me is the point. The point of the process and what I've witnessed to have worked. And everybody has their levels of like what transgression and violation looks like to them. But for what we would typically equate as something super horrible, the process has worked. It's done for the
Hmm.
folks that are like directly impacted. And then that helps to like be a wave of transition within communities. But
Hmm.
it takes a lot for all of us to get to that place because we are conditioned for punishment is the thing. Somebody hurt somebody, go and take them out. And like lots of communities, I mean, we see that in communities where there's, a large population of guns, somebody takes out somebody's cousin and then you take out their cousin. A very eye for an eye, existence. But it's up to us because we know better and we know that there's other ways to try to merge that into the way that we think of how we deal with folks.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that our heart is not going to be disgusted and pounded. We're not going to want to curse and scream and be human when we are facing the issue, and that should be allowed in a safe way to happen, in my
You've given me a lot to think about.
opinion. It's a very ooh ooh la la lovey lovey, but it's not because it's really one of the most difficult things to actually be accountable for what you've done. Like that, like if sit in it and just think about your own personal experiences when you know you've done something wrong to somebody, to like really sit there and say, I did this thing to you and I know I did, and I am acknowledging how I hurt you in the different ways, and I might not know all of the ways. And you can sit here and tell me all of the ways right now like that's a hard thing to do,
Yeah,
and
and
people don't want to.
yeah, and I'm just getting more aware of that our society, I mean, I knew this like peripherally, but on a deeper level, I'm really getting that our society is just not, we don't know how to hold each other accountable, how to hold ourselves
Mm,
accountable, how to, we don't have, we hardly have any systems in place that do that on the regular. So I'm,
mhm.
I'm I'm imagining that that's why this is all feels so, oh my God, that I can't even, I'm thinking about it with myself and my own transgressor, my
Mhm.
father. I gave him an opportunity to own his behavior, and he chose to walk out of my life.
Right.
And
Exactly.
and so, what would I do? He's approaching, he just had a birthday, he's 89 years old, and
Mhm.
he has never owned
Acknowledge.
kids, and never acknowledged, never validated, never said you're right, and I'm just curious about, I know that he's getting close to the end of his life, and would he would he ever want to sit down and have that
Mhm.
conversation with me, and would I be able to sit through it if we did?
That's real. It's literally harder than taking a sentence, getting a whip in, maybe, I mean, death is death, but like it's really one of the most difficult things that folks can do. So when everyone's thinking about, oh, it's so la la, like folks don't want to participate in being really truly accountable. And then it's hard for the person who has been harmed to say, like really literally what you just said, do I actually want to, can I sit through that opening those wounds and that harm, but then also are you a person that never gets to address that thing and then holds that through your life or goes through whatever healing process that you need to go through,
Right.
to get through it. Um, yeah, it's, you know, human connection and relations is a very intricate dynamic. And all of the possibilities of how we can interrelate with each other should be considered on the table, for what your capacity is. And that's why I do love restorative practice, because it allows for people to sit in whatever capacity they can sit in. And because it has to be consent from all
Right.
of the parties and all of the support parties and the community in general. And it takes a minute to get there, but the labor of getting there typically has pretty good outcomes. And this is not immediate after like one moment, but it's like,
Right.
okay, we're deciding to engage in a process. And then when we talk about, transformational justice, we're talking about doing that on an infrastructure. We spoke about this before in some of our shows, but we're talking about an infrastructure, like a way of being and operating differently.
Yeah.
Um,
Which we don't have yet.
mhm.
But
You got to get it from yourself first. That's what people need to like. You got to be able to like even imagine in your mind first something different and be willing to sit through that.
yeah, I mean, I think about my process since my awakening, early on in my days of my awakening to my whiteness, when somebody would call me in for doing an infraction, I would, for causing harm, not doing an infraction, for causing harm.
Yeah.
I would, see, I would like totally shut down. I wouldn't be able to talk to anybody for a week. I would go into this deep depression. I would be all of the bullshit. And it's slowly but surely, you know, I've gotten to a place where I don't have to like go through that whole tumult, to get
Hmm.
to the place where I can hold myself accountable, listen to somebody else holding me accountable, realize that I'm not some monster. I'm just a person that screwed up based on my indoctrination, and this is how we can repair. And so that whole process that has been taking place over, well, I guess it's 10 years now this year.
Mm, yeah.
If I think about my own journey on that and just kind of relate that to how it could be in our society, it would be like super, super hard in the beginning because, we've spent millennia being told that we're not capable of harming anyone else and that we're just good people.
Mhm.
But then slowly but surely we would get to a place where it could be on a regular basis, like
It just becomes a part of what it is
well, yeah,
that you do. And it's really interesting because I think that that's the ask that not I think that that's it is the ask that I've experienced being a non-white person from a traditionally marginalized community. Like, can you just kind of like leave us alone one and kind of listen and recognize the harm? And like that's all we asking.
yeah,
Acknowledge it and leave us alone. Like we don't even I mean, yes, there is like the folks that are asking for reparations, which is right and true and all of that. But a majority of it is like
just wanted to
acknowledge the thing and then leave us alone so that we can live our lives. And that is less of what's happening now.
yeah.
There's no acknowledgement of the thing and no leaving alone and more limitation of life and over surveillance and over criminalization. And the fact that we just celebrated the 4th of July
Hmm.
and celebrating independence and actually fighting for these liberties and freedom, is a uh, oxymoron that we're existing in. Yeah.
Why do I give a fuck? Why do
Thanks for
I
joining
give a
us.
fuck?
Until next time,
Why
as you
do I
move
try
throughout
so
your day,
hard?
continue to ask yourself,
Why do I give a
Why Do I Give a Fuck
Why do
is
I
produced in
give a
collaboration with Johanna and Diane. Music by Norwegian musician Water. See you next time.